Attention hospital HR in Canada. Are you in search of the perfect insurance solution for your part-time and casual employees? Look no further. Meet Healthcare Providers Group Insurance Plan, your go-to option for ensuring the well-being of your team.
With healthcare providers, also known as HCP, you're not just providing insurance, you're providing peace of mind. HCP's comprehensive coverage includes medical, dental, and vision benefits designed to keep your part-time employees happy and healthy. There's even a package that includes life, long-term disability, and accidental death, disease, and dismemberment coverage for those who already have other group health and dental coverage.
It's time to bridge the gap between full-time and part-time staff benefits. With Healthcare Providers Group Insurance Plan, you can level the playing field and show your commitment to all of your team members.
Join the community of over 145 hospital sites who have made the smart choice. Visit healthcareproviders.ca today to discover how HCP can help you support your team in a meaningful way.
Is this thing on?
I think they can hear us a bit better now. Do you think they are ready to change the status quo?
It's one thing to get them listening, but now let's get them to act.
You are now about to witness the strength of nursing knowledge.
Hi, and welcome to the Gritty Nurse Podcast, an unfiltered and unapologetic podcast which discusses health and healthcare. My name is Amie.
My name is Sarah.
And we are your hosts.
Don't forget to hit the subscribe button wherever you listen to podcasts. Google, Spotify, iTunes, or our YouTube page. Please rate and review us.
Make sure you get our book, The Wisdom of Nurses. There's no better gift than giving the wisdom of nurses to nurses during Nursing Week. Hi, and welcome to the Gritty Nurse Podcast, a podcast that's unfiltered and discusses health and healthcare, and today some other random topics. We have with us in the room Mr. Matthew Shepard, our graduate nurse, our nurse that's now an RN. Can't wait to hear all the great things that he's doing. But we're going to talk about some crazy, wild stuff that's been happening in the nursing world, particularly in response to nurses dancing on TikTok. And a nurse is driving off buildings. And you know, you might be thinking at the top of the episode, like, what the hell? How are these two things related? We will get to that. We will get to that shortly. So I'll pass it over to Sarah, or Matthew, you want to say a couple words first? Or
Matthew, you've been on the podcast a few times. So for any of you hardcore Gritty Nurse listeners, you will know Matthew has been on the podcast at least 3 times now. I think this is your 4th time.
And is a part of the Wisdom of Nurses.
Yes, you are. You have a chapter in the Wisdom of Nurses. So you're honorary Gritty Nurse, and we're so glad to have you again today.
Thank you.
Why don't we start by talking about some crazy videos we've been seeing online. So recently, as Amie said, there was a TikTok video posted which showed a nurse dancing in a club. A strip club to be exact. And then it kind of transitions to her putting on like a yellow hospital gown at work. So obviously these two things should not go together. And I think a lot of assumptions were made. So let's break this down. Okay, who found this video first? Was it you, Amie?
I think I found this video. So I found it on Instagram on Black Nurses Meet. You know, let's start with this piece, right? And I really want to dispel and break down this myth that, you know, okay, yes, there are nurses who do videos and dance on TikToks, but this isn't the nursing world. Because one of the first things that you see when people are trying to bash nurses or, you know, say that we have no cred or that we shouldn't be speaking about anything is they go back and refer to TikTok videos. Like all you do is, you know, dance on TikTok while you should be working your shift. And we'll probably talk about that a little bit more, but I really want to say that I think this is actually far and few in between. Like, I think if we were to say, okay, there are, what is it, like 30 million? No, okay, I don't know. There's a lot of nurses in the world, right?
A lot of them.
I think this is a very small number of nurses who actually do this in relation to how many nurses there actually are.
Yes.
Plus, I believe that this is a specific generational thing because you ain't seeing my ass jiggling
Absolutely.
up there on TikTok.
Absolutely.
You will never catch me doing a TikTok in relation to nursing, in relation to like, it's just not my generation thing. Because I think like, it's not saying that, you know, our generation didn't, you know, do some crazy things before shift, whatever the case may be. We just didn't talk about it in the streets. It was kind of like whatever state.
And we didn't post it on social media.
Right. It was like whatever. It's kind of like that bedroom talk, right? You know, what happens in the sheets stays in the sheets. Like, we're not going to bring our business out and post it on the internet because it's wide open access. Like, anybody can get access to these videos. So first and foremost, I'm going to say to people, like, this is few and far between. This is not a regular thing that people do. There is a certain generation that does this, but it's not our generation. And again, it's just, I don't know. I saw the video and I was kind of like, really, like, because essentially what it says is at 5:59 she's dancing, she's getting the, you know, the girls dancing on her booty, she's at a strip club, and then at 6:59 she's getting dressed and ready to go to work,
or she's already already at work. She's putting on,
so I don't know, like, I didn't even know if it's believable. I don't know if it's made for clicks and likes. Like, I'm not really too sure what's happening here.
Did she bathe?
I think that it doesn't matter what profession you're in. There is no profession where that is okay. And your employer would see that and be okay with it. So I don't really know what the point was. I don't think it was well thought through. Maybe it was for clicks and likes, but I don't see the positives here.
So kind of just going back to something that you had said, I think that when you have a small percentage of people who do these crazy things and post them, and that becomes the focus, it really just makes nurses look really bad. But I think that's also the thing. You can't really focus on these small numbers of content creators. I guess that's what we're calling them.
Yeah. And again, like,
say that's nursing, because that's not what we do.
I agree. And again, I think one of the things that you mentioned to me too, Matthew, is like, we don't want to nurse bash either, right?
Yeah,
we're not trying to call out this nurse for whatever her behavior is. I do feel that there's this weird generational things where, like, it's kind of almost like a disconnect from reality, where it's just like, I'm getting and seeking validation through content creation, which okay, fine. But like, I just think some people take it way too far. I don't really believe this video. And if it is true, then we'll talk about, like, if it is true, what implications this has, but I really don't believe this. I think it's just a video for clicks and likes. I don't think the two things are synonymous. Like, I think that, yeah, maybe she did go to a club because clearly that's her face or whatever the case may be. But do I think she went to a club before she actually went to work? I don't know. I think it's just to start a conversation versus reality. And then maybe we should talk about, like, if it is true, what implications this has for nursing and nursing as a profession.
Well, maybe she's embellishing a bit. Maybe she did go to the club. Maybe she got home at 1:30.
You know what would have changed everything?
Right?
What would have changed everything is if she went to work first and then went out to the strip club. I think, not to say that that's right. I think that would have made it like a lot better and a lot more believable, because who of us hasn't gone out after? I mean, maybe you haven't, but when I was in my younger days, I used to go out after a shift because I still had energy. And, you know, like, I think as long as you don't, I know, right?
I really don't know what that is. Come on.
Can you imagine, like, back in the day, you would work a 12-hour shift and still be like, yeah, I'm gonna rally, I'm gonna go out. Not anymore, my friends. Not anymore.
I'm not trying to do any of that.
Yeah, like, again, it's just like, okay, so let's talk about the implications if it was actually true. So if this nurse did actually go to a club before she went for her shift, what does that mean? Let's say this nurse actually did do this, right? And what implications does this really have for practice? First and foremost, we kind of talked about this on a previous episode, Sarah, about, like, you know, what are the accountabilities for your private life versus your public life, right? So let's start there. So her going to a strip club is none of anybody's business. I don't care. Like, if she wants to go to a strip club and she wants to shake down, do whatever, that's her business. Fine. That is your right. You want to sell your toes on OnlyFans.
Do it, girl.
Whatever. That's your business.
Make your money.
I think what I'm having trouble with is she put the two together, right? The whole, when we talk about like our code of ethics and the CNO and regulation for the ANA, there's this whole idea behind that if you're going to call yourself a nurse or you're going to put the two together, like here's my profession and here's kind of what I am saying from a social media standpoint, this is where it gets iffy for like the ANA and the CNO, because if you are using your title as a nurse, that's where it becomes a slippery slope. Now you've put in your personal life as being, I'm dancing before I'm going, and now here I am as a nurse, because obviously that is what the problem is. It's not that she was at a strip club. It's the fact that she tied the two together, and that's what is somewhat tasteless, I guess, what some people would say. But I think it's just know what your friggin' regulations say. Like if your regulations say like you cannot go out and say that you're a nurse and do these certain things and put them together, then that's what's problematic. It's like, for example, those nurses who went to rally during the oh my gosh, why am I drawing a blank? Help me here. Those nurses that went out to the States.
Anti-vax.
Yes, for the coup for January 6th. And they're nurses. Like, we are nurses and we're against this. And it's like, well, okay, you could have been out there, saying your piece, but you added the nurse piece. And that's what the problem is, because our profession has to be upheld to a certain standard, right?
Yes.
So them putting the two together is what's problematic. And that's what's problematic with this particular nurse, whether the video was real or not. That is just like, she's like, well, I'm dancing, holding it up, and I'm a nurse going into work.
I think, okay, so here's what I'm thinking. Let's say that you are a patient in the hospital and you come across this video of the same nurse that you have looking after you right now, and you see that video. How does that make you feel about the care that you're receiving? Okay, because just going back to another episode, nurses are the most trusted profession, right? Does this instill trust in you as a healthcare as a patient seeking healthcare or not? I think that's the other concern here. And it's not to say that we might assume things, like maybe we think, oh, she might have been drinking or whatnot. But regardless of all that, I don't think that instills confidence in anybody knowing that this is your healthcare provider.
I think that it really depends on the situation as well, right? So if she came in bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and she, was just hitting all the notes, she's just doing her job and she's doing it well, great. I'm not saying that her still doing this is a good thing, because I still think that she should have kept this to herself. But if she has this type of energy, cool, all the power to you. You're not using it wisely, but that's neither here nor there. I digress. If she came in smelling like alcohol and cigarettes and was sluggish and rude and or dirty, why are you here?
Yeah, I mean,
why did you come to work?
I mean, the other piece is it's so bizarre to me that to even see this, right? And I kind of want to read some of the comments here. So like, one nurse says, last I checked, I'm a nurse, not a nun. So check your humor and gullibility. Then another nurse is like, oh, this is not a good look. Were you sober all night, or you tried to sober up right before your work? It's given not safe. And this person's like, the way I need a 24 to 48 recovery time after going out tells y'all everything you need to know, but I physically can't anymore. But I definitely did this in my 20s. And this person's like, don't take care of sick people after you've been drinking all night. But okay. So clearly, it's like divided. It's like almost like 50. I don't know. Well, I haven't read all the comments. It's like, some people are like, this ain't a good look, and some people are like, yeah, I did this in my 20s. Yeah. Again, I agree with you, Sarah. Like, it's not a good look, man.
It gives me an icky feeling. That's all. It's like, oh my god, this is what my nurse might have been doing.
Let's do this. Let's put the shoe on the other foot. You're sick. You're in the hospital, and you know that this isn't your nurse. How would it make you feel?
If I knew it wasn't my nurse?
If this was your nurse?
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. It would give me an ick factor. It would rise my blood pressure. I'd be very anxious. Maybe she's hitting all the notes, but it just plants a seed of doubt in my mind.
What are you saying? I see your thinking.
Have you guys never partied all night and worked the next morning? Is this just like
I think this is out
Well,
of
I
the
think this
generation.
is a little bit different.
We're
Okay,
in the
so the
same
video is literally
generation.
saying, if you look at the timestamps, and I'm not saying it's
I
accurate, I
don't
think
think
it's
it's
just for
real
show.
though. I
I
don't
don't
think
think
it's
it's real. I
real.
don't think
No,
it's
I
real.
think,
But
but I
I'm
think, I
like,
think the person is trying to show a flex, like, you know, like I can do this.
absolutely,
I can
100%.
party and then I can get up and go to work. I think they're trying to show a flex in a good way, not realizing that
It
it could
just
be interpreted so differently.
absolutely like
Right.
she's still a girl boss. Like I'm still here for her. You know what? Get your coin, do your thing, have fun with your friends. Just like I think that some things shouldn't be posted. I think that this was just it's a live and learn situation. Hopefully she still has her job. Hopefully she's still fine. But I mean, what I'm seeing here is other people saying, in my 20s, I used to do this. I mean, I wasn't at strip clubs, but I had partied up till late in the night, and I've gone home, had a couple of hours of sleep, and I've gone to work the next morning. But I also won't drink if I'm doing things like
And
that.
you wouldn't post that.
Well, I'm of an older generation who didn't have the technology, and there weren't spaces in social media like this. I mean, we had what? We had Facebook, I guess, but we had what was that other one?
MySpace?
That's it.
Oh, are
MySpace.
we going that far
MySpace
back?
was
I
all
wasn't even sure if we were gonna say that.
MySpace. It's
Oh
yeah.
wild.
gosh.
Yeah, like I went to scroll down and see because I said it's 50-50. It's not 50-50 split. So people are like, oh, why is everyone so judgmental? And this person's like, well, because we may not take it seriously, but this is a person's job.
Yeah.
A nursing school student or the public may not feel the same way. This is a bad luck. This
It
other
is.
person's like, girl, bye. I was in bed. And this
I
person's
was
like,
too.
woo, child. I did crazy stuff like this back when I was young, tenderoni at 22, 23. But now I'm a big age old of 40, and then you couldn't pay me $1 million to do this crazy crap.
At all.
And this other person's like, oh no, baby, take this down. It's making us look reckless. The rest of the profession look crazy. Even if you feel like you're functional, you deal with people's lives. You don't need to publicly display this behavior, like posting it on the internet. Even if you weren't drinking, you have not slept. Shake my head. Why are you promoting this reckless videos? How does this uplift the nursing profession? And I think this actually almost dovetails into kind of our next story, unless there's some more that we want to dig into.
Well,
with
I think
this one.
before we do that, we're going to take a very quick break for a word from our sponsors. Attention hospital employees and retirees in Canada. Picture this, a benefit plan designed for casual and part-time hospital employees and retirees who aren't covered by their hospital's group health plan. Introducing Healthcare Providers Group Insurance Plan, a friendly partner dedicated to your health and well-being.
With affordable plan premiums and an exceptional support team, Healthcare Providers, also known as HCP, is dedicated to helping you every step of the way. Enrolling is easy, and you'll have access to a wide range of health and basic dental benefits from day one.
Already have health and dental coverage through another group plan? HCP still has your back. For less than $32 a month, the Signature Package, which includes life, long-term disability, accidental death, disease, and dismemberment, provides valuable income protection and peace of mind for the unexpected.
So take charge of your healthcare and financial security today. Visit healthcareproviders.ca to learn more. All right, so now we're back, and I think that this is probably a good time to segue into the next story. So we went from a story of a nurse who allegedly, I'm going to say allegedly because we don't know if it's true, was out partying 1 hour before they arrived back at work.
Mhm.
And the next story kind of segues into talking about a nurse who was exhausted. So this particular nurse was a nurse in Boston. I'll probably pass it over to you, Sarah, to tell the whole story. But essentially what happened was a nurse who worked in Boston was, she just finished her shifts, 12 hours, because, that's what it is. It's 11.25 with your breaks. Let's be honest, nurses don't get no breaks. We're working 12 hours. This nurse worked her shift, got into her car, and drove off the parking garage of her workplace. The nurse did live, has injuries, but essentially what she said was, I was just too tired.
Would you be surprised if I told you that a nurse was so exhausted after her shift that she accidentally fell asleep and drove her car off the top of the parking garage? No, nurses are not going to be surprised to hear this because unfortunately, most of us have been there in similar situations where we've been that exhausted. But that's allegedly what happened back on May 17th at Brigham and Women's Faulkner Hospital. It's part of Mass General Brigham Health System in Boston. A nurse finished her shift but was due to be back on call at 11 p.m. Decided to stay and sleep in her car instead of driving home because she was so exhausted. She later told police that around 1 a.m. she went to move her car because there were lights shining in it where she was. And she accidentally hit the gas instead of the brake and went front first through the guardrail off the top of the parking garage and did suffer injuries. This is not an isolated incident. Yeah, this is a little extreme, but I don't know any nurse that has had to work night shift for any ongoing length of time that doesn't have similar scary stories. Whether it's just nodding off at a red light, I've definitely done that. When I used to work night shift for like 2.5, 3 years, I could never acclimate, no matter what, no matter how hard I tried, I could never acclimate to night shift. Couldn't get off of night shift, right? I would keep the spray bottle in the car to like spray my face to wake me up, turn the air conditioner on full blast, roll the windows down, turn the music up. Like I did all the things, but you get to a red light and you're still for a minute and you start to nod off. And I actually did get in a car accident at one point driving home from falling asleep at the wheel. Thank God no one else was involved and no one was hurt. I literally just kind of veered off the road into some construction cones. And it could have been bad, right? We are overworking nurses. This is absolutely a patient safety concern. And in some states, it can be considered a form of patient abandonment to knowingly work when you are that physically exhausted. We need to be prioritizing nurses' health and rest.
So we go from one story to a nurse being like, oh, I was out all night, boop, 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 tap my booty, twerk, 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 to a nurse who drove off of a building because she was exhausted from work. Mm-hmm. So when we juxtapose the two stories, something seems not right. So let's dig into the story a little bit more. Sarah, you want to tell us a bit?
All right. So the first story was early in the morning, right? So let's imagine another nurse has worked the full day shift. She's come back. I don't know what happened, but okay, so she finished her regular shift and she was on call beginning at 11. So she decides, I'm going to take a nap. Who hasn't ever taken a nap in their car? I think we have all done this. We've all done this. It's perfectly normal. But what happened was she woke up around 1 a.m. because there were overhead lights. So, they come on, they're like right in her face. She wakes up and she meant to move her vehicle, but instead of stepping on the brake, she stepped on the gas. She was on the top floor. I don't know how many levels high this was, but she fully drove off, and ended up with minor injuries. So the car started to teeter.
How can you laugh? Oh my God.
That is the grace of God or whatever day
that's true. That's true.
You want to
that's true.
You worship the universe or whomever because
yeah. God. And so this happened in Boston. So Boston Fire showed up. They came and assessed her. There was an investigation, obviously, by the hospital. And this is the part that really bugs me. I don't know if you guys saw this, but they basically said, after the investigation, they said it is against policy for employees to sleep in their cars at the hospital.
What?
And those who do not wish to go home when on call should be offered an on-call room. Tell me, has any nurse ever been offered an on-call room because they needed to sleep?
Vacant patient room.
An on-call room?
Like way to put it on the nurse.
I have an on-call room. Okay.
I literally, okay, you know what? The on-call rooms it's like Fort Knox, okay? They're for the doctors. I've seen it, but I've never used it before.
I've used it once, but that's when I was a student at Humber River.
What?
So my preceptor, they weren't there. My preceptor was like, go to the on-call room. The residents aren't here. I think it was like around Christmas or something. She's like, so just go there and sleep. And I did. And I walked in there and I was like, Oh my God.
The only time I saw an on-call room was when someone was going in to clean it and I was walking by. That is the biggest bunch of baloney I have ever heard. I know there is no policy here at all in Ontario where they would write that a nurse gets to sleep in an on-call room. Are they kidding us?
No, but this is what I mean. It's
I
like
would love to
so
see that, though.
instead of like investigating like maybe like this nurse didn't get adequate time off or she needed a safe way to get home. Let's just say to her, well, you should have slept on the on-call room with this invitation that didn't exist. Like, by the way, I also should say that she did sustain a broken arm and back, so it's not like she walked away scot-free.
She had some angels
And
for that
leg
day.
injuries,
Tear
but you
her
know it could have been a
down.
lot worse. So
A lot worse. Bless her.
And like, what would they have done if she didn't make it? Like, I honestly believe that they would be like, oh, it's such a tragic incident. Burnout is so bad, mental health illness, and nothing would be done.
no, they would have blamed
Nothing's
her.
done
They would have
good
been they
about
would have
it.
said,
Pizza
"Oh,
and
you know, too
hand
bad. She should have had the on-call room and this wouldn't have happened." I just feel like every time something goes wrong, everyone's so quick to blame the nurse and not the system.
Yeah.
And I really feel like we need better supports and work schedules that actually allow nurses to function.
Yeah, again, essentially,
agree.
again, at the kind of the end of the story, she's like, it was a 22-mile drive for me where I worked, and I was exhausted, and that's the whole thing, right? Like nurses, I think about how many times I used to drive with my window open. So like, if you're not from Ontario, you're not familiar with our climate here. When we're in the winter, dead of winter, it's cold. I would drive home with my window wide open because
Keep you awake.
that's how I'd keep myself awake. And I remember like many times where I would like maybe sleep a little bit longer at the hospital because I was too tired, but there was no policies or anything or regulations in place that like what would happen if this would happen. And I personally think here in Ontario, unfortunately, we're not as litigious as we should be. But if a nurse was to get into an accident while they were leaving work or they were on the job, that you would actually be able to sue the employer because you're still technically working. Again, I just think that this is such an unfortunate situation where we're not protected, we're not supported. There aren't policies in place for if a nurse is exhausted in terms of what they should go and do. And I think we can even just look back a couple of years ago in terms of the pandemic. Nurses were working doubles, triples, all sorts of shifts that they should have not been doing. And yeah, it's very risky business. It's risky business because again, if you're that tired, okay, let's be honest here. She probably didn't start her shift tired, but she probably was tired.
Well, I
during
think she
her
did the right
shift.
thing. Instead of
That is what
trying
it
to
is.
drive home, at least she tried to sleep in the parking garage to
Yeah.
sort of get some more energy back before going home or whatever. And like I've had a coworker who actually, and maybe this has happened to you guys, I've had a coworker who actually did fall asleep driving home. And thankfully she drove into a ditch, but she could have easily drove
Holy
into
hell.
oncoming traffic. Like she
Absolutely.
says she doesn't remember falling asleep, but she remembers waking up and like steam's coming out of her car because she's obviously hit something. So it's serious. And I actually found this study. It was a survey that was sent to over 7,000 nurses, and 30% of these nurses reported having dozed off during their commute to or from work. Like that is
Wow.
huge. And 44% disclosed feeling unsafe or uncomfortable during their commute due to drowsiness or fatigue.
That's wild. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to live walking distance away from my place of work. So if I'm tired, I'm walking regardless. But it's wild. I mean, I have friends that have fallen asleep at the wheel. I have friends that have woken up in ditches. I have friends who've, hit partitions and thank God have not hit anybody. But, just to hear that, oh yeah, I got into a car accident because I was so tired is just madness to me. Because why aren't we being supported in these ways where, well, we're not getting burned out? Like, I think it's great when you give us pizza. Thanks, but I personally would like more. Like, I don't like use the money for something else. Like, I don't know, hire more nurses,
Yeah,
make
well,
things
Mm-hmm.
make things a lot easier. Give us more support. Like, what the fuck? Sorry.
no, you can
No,
swear.
no,
It's
no, that's okay. It's
Fuck.
a Great Girls podcast.
And I think you were mentioning some stats there, Sarah. So again, officials, so like they actually did reach out to the union, and the union said that exhaustion and burnout are the major issues here, particularly with nursing. Like I feel like we've been saying these words time and time again. We talk about burnout, we talk about exhaustion, we talk about all these different things, we talk about the nursing retention toolkit that's supposed to help, but it's just like I don't know how much, like whether the healthcare administration really cares. I personally say that they don't care, and they're willing to continue to coast and do what they're doing because, you know, nurses aren't taking a stand in the way that I think they should be taking. Anyways, I digress. But it says, you know, although officials have not released information about the nurse's specific work schedule, there have been studies that have shown that long shifts, particularly at night, contribute to drowsy driving and may increase the risk of car accidents. So again, like the evidence is out there to say that, hey, we're putting our nurses and other people who work in you know, healthcare, particularly for like residents. Oh my God. Like I met a resident who had a schedule. Like I remember like going to sleep, waking up, and this person was still there. And I was like, why are you here? Like, how is this safe?
Yeah.
And resident schedules are fucked up too. Like
right. I totally think that
really
I think they're worse, but I think, you know, they have the
can't keep
on-call
doing
room.
this to each other.
No,
Like
and it's awful. It's really awful. And, you know, I would love to know if there are stats to show are nurses getting into more car accidents than the general public. My feeling is yes, but I'm like,
or even
I wouldn't even really just say nurses, but I'd say a lot of people that work at night
and
shift
healthcare,
workers.
shift workers,
workers,
and I bet you any money. Here's the kicker, right? I think this is the other stat that we should look into. And I know they're not going to do it, but how many patient errors are related to, you know, nurses who aren't getting enough rest, or, you know, nurses who, like, for example, if you report that you're tired or whatnot, like how many, like, are there more errors on shift? And I guarantee you the number of errors substantially increase 100%. If you're exhausted. So yeah, I think that's what we should do. We should really dig into the stats and see what they have to say. But to wrap this episode up, so let's talk about the two incidences juxtaposed against each other. So a nurse who is essentially probably awake well before her shift and now going in his or her shift, going into work, and they technically would be tired. Let's not play things down. And then a nurse who's worked an entire shift and, you know, crashes off the floor of a building. So this is where I think this is where kind of the rubber meets the road here. It's just like, should this nurse be posting this crap on TikTok? It's crap. Let's just be honest. Crap. Like, should they be posting this on TikTok? Clickbait. No, man, leave it. Send it to your friends. Even if it's true, fine. Send it to your friends.
Well, I mean, don't send it to your friends. It could still end up online.
Exactly.
I would just keep it to yourself.
Right. But the thing is, like, you're private. Just leave that out, man. You don't have to put the two together. Just
document everything, girl.
And the thing is, at the end of the day, the other piece, and I always bring it back to this, is patient safety, right? What is the point of her going in to take care of patients if she can't actually, because she's too tired, and or her safety in terms of her care is compromised? What's the point in gowning up at any point? There is no point
at all.
So again, I think that's where I think for me, it just doesn't make sense. Like, you know, we say like, make it make sense. It don't make sense at all.
No, definitely does not.
The sense is not sensing.
Yeah, I think it's, again, like all the power to you if you're able to do that and have all that fun. Firstly, I think it's tacky. Don't do it. Secondly, it is dangerous. Whether or not you have all of the energy in the world, it's dangerous. Don't, like, why put anyone at any sort of risk like that working in healthcare? And if the organization that you work at sees it, guess what? You're about to lose your job.
For sure, right? Like it just doesn't make any sense to me why you'd put yourself in jeopardy like that. Like why you might want to put your job or your neck on the line like that, particularly, again, tying your nursing status and nursing as a profession in relation to it. Like you could, it just it doesn't make any sense. It's not sexy.
It's not sexy. But with that being said, we're not bashing the individual herself. We are talking about, you know, putting these things out there. You don't need to put these things out there. We don't need to see them.
Right. And
we don't
I would
include.
say for the second story, you know, I don't know the situation. I don't know what she was planning to do, if she had another shift or she just wanted to sleep before going home. But I would say to any nurse out there, set your boundaries. You don't have to pick up a double shift. You don't have to go in on
No.
your day off. You know, it's not your fault that the hospital can't staff themselves appropriately. So don't feel
100%.
guilty. Like, if you need to sleep, then sleep. If you have been awake all day and they've called you in for a night shift, you don't have to do it. You
You
really
don't have
don't.
to do it
You really
because
don't.
you agreed to this hour to this hour. You don't have to agree going beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably another episode, and we could probably talk about this another time, but I have heard the instances where nurses have been asked to stay, and then they feel that there's a fear of risk of abandonment of their patient. So that's a whole other episode where it's just like, you've worked your 12, you've done your due diligence. They're like, oh, someone's called in sick, we need you to stay. And you're like, well, I can't stay. And they're like, well, that's patient abandonment. That's called abuse. But we'll leave that for another episode to discuss, because that is another part of the whole issue, right? Feeling that you can't leave because you might be, you know, your college might say that this is abandonment of a patient. So what's our takeaways? I think from our first video is just don't do this. Just don't. I mean, just don't, please.
Use those critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
Like, it's cute, it's funny, I get it, but like, that's between you and your people.
And we're out here trying to make things better for nursing. We're tired, we're burnt out. Don't show them that you have energy to dance at a club beforehand. Like, what are you doing? You should be like dragging yourself in and be like, oh, it's so hard. But showing them you're dancing at a club beforehand, they're not going to help us. They're not going to help, right? So don't do that. And, you know, the other half is like, we need to continue calling out the elephant in the room. It's not even an elephant anymore. Like, this is ridiculous. We know that nurses are burnt out, overworked, that we're exhausted. Things are being done, and we need better policies and things that keep us safe. And like you said, Sarah, boundary set and be like, yeah, I worked and I'm going home because I'm tired.
Yeah, that is my theme of the year. So if you don't take away anything else, it would be set boundaries in your life. And, you know, I think that if anyone out there listening has similar stories you want to share with us, please share with us. We want to hear them. Also, don't forget to rate and review us. We want to hear what you have to say. And don't forget, we had a book that came out called The Wisdom of Nurses. Go ahead and pick up a copy. It's in hard copy. It's an ebook. It's an audiobook. Oh, you know what? You could listen to our book on your drive to or from work, and maybe that'll keep you awake.
Yeah,
it sure will.
It's
and you know, I have to do this, and you know, people are gonna laugh at me because, you know, maybe they're like, oh, she's too old for this stuff or whatever, and that, you know, because we're from Canada, maybe they'll laugh at me a little bit more, but I have to say this. I have to put it in. These young whippersnappers, they're just not like us. They not like us. Anyhow, thanks for listening and have a great weekend.